Welcome, everyone, to the Purr Play Sip Podcast. My name is Chuck Patton. I am the proprietor of Perfect Day Cat Cafe in Louisville, Kentucky, and Covington, Kentucky, which is right over the river in Cincinnati. Today's podcast, I'm truly excited about. It's something that I'm passionate about, and it would make sense because it is all about picking out your cat or kitten. There are a lot of questions that come up to us all the time about, especially for people that have never adopted a cat before, don't have as much cat experience, but quite frankly, people who have a lot of cats at home and people who have other animals at home, kids at home. There's a lot to know about this, and there's a lot people I make mistakes on, I believe, and I don't mean to be critical about it, but I'm trying to save people some time and some problems. So at this particular point, we are sitting here in where are we at? We're at in the mid-April. And getting ready to go into kitten season, which is a whole nother podcast we're super excited about. So as we go into that season, we're starting to see a lot of different people out there, a lot of people asking questions, but we are at 7,200 adoptions between both locations. And in that situation, that means we have talked to, well, if I've talked to 7,000 adopters, by the way, this is Cat Cafe Roberts. He's going to be in our next podcast talking a little bit about what you can do if you find kittens out in the wild. Speaking of which, this is Crypto with a K. Something that is really important for us to start understanding here is, am I adopting a kitten or am I adopting a cat? I'm just telling you, Crypto's a lot. He's a lot of challenge, but he's a lot of fun as well, too. And in about 2 months, this entire room will be filled with Crypto-like animals that are looking for homes. But what we really wanted to do is make sure that we're providing the general public, I don't care where you are in the United States, if you are out there wanting to rescue a cat, finding a new forever friend, we want to make sure that we kind of give you some tips to going through there. So first and foremost, when we go through there, make sure you are going to a reputable shelter. There are a lot of great shelters out there. Everybody is doing their best. Please know that they're overwhelmed. Please know that they're understaffed. It's almost everywhere, especially during kitten season. But the reality is what happens sometimes is people will go out and they'll search on the internet. You need to understand that some of those cats have not been taken care of. They have been not vetted properly. And it could be a perfectly good kitty, but you also might have a huge bill on your hand because that cat is really not healthy. I tell a story when we were opening up our cat cafe in Covington. I was literally meeting with the construction folks. We're going over all this stuff, and I see somebody walking down the street with a giant box full of kittens. And I'm just like, hey, what are you doing? I'm just kind of picking their brain. And they said, oh, yeah, I found these cats. Do you want to buy some? And I looked in there, and the poor cats were, they had poop on them and everything. And there's a whole nother story behind it. But at the end of the day, please know that these shelters go through a process to make sure that it's vetted, tested for FIV, all those good kind of things, behavior tested. And it's really, really important that you are going through a shelter that knows exactly what they're doing. And yeah, call around. Some shelters are better than others. Some of them do more mission work. Some of them do more outreach. So it's important that you kind of do your research.
Well, and
yeah,
we did our tour of the Kentucky Humane Society on a podcast, so you can check out that podcast. And they went over all the things that they could go through when they vet out their cats. Oh, Crypto has something to say.
Yeah, sorry. What did you think, Crypto? So, number 2, obviously, spay neutering. I have actually had both situations. I found a stray before I even did this concept of a cat cafe. I found a stray in the bushes. I went and brought it to the vet. Can you please take care of everything that needed to be done? And I knew that I wanted a cat in my life, and I didn't have one at the time. And so when I did that, it was, $400 or $500. The great thing about a lot of the shelters that exist out there is they are subsidized by your county. They are a nonprofit, somewhere around that range, and they are able to make the spay-neuter surgeries very convenient. And they do them all day long, every day. So it's important, spay-neuter, Make sure those shelters get it in there. And again, adoption fees range anywhere from $25 when they're overwhelmed, all the way up to, I'd say, somewhere around $125 to $150 at the very, very high end, depending on where you are throughout the country. So that is number 2, spay and neuter. Number 3, make sure that you ask, and you should be able to get all of their records on what they have gone through as far as the vetting process is concerned. What is crypto? So they should have a litany of things that was probably in the previous podcast that we had that have all the different shots. Make sure that they have been FIV tested. Make sure that they have, Giardia exists out there, coccidia, ringworm. Those are some of the more common out there. But, the most common, of course, is upper respiratory infections. It's not very invasive. It's 7 to 10 days worth of antibiotics. It's easy to go, but it's very important that they go through the protocols. Almost every one of the shelters, 90% of their protocols are exactly the same. Those protocols, again, are going to save you not only money, which we say it's not about money until the vet bills $1,000, then it's about money. But it's also going to save you some really heartaches. So there has been cats that just have some bad ailments and, they just don't make it, and especially when you're looking at kitten season. And that's one of the things that we make sure that the shelters are going to be able to take care of it for you. So number 4 is, let's try to get some history on the cats. So where do they come from? What area? The reality of the shelters, though, I point this out, if you can get it, it's a plus. But the reality of what goes on with shelters is these cats are literally, somebody calls up the shelter and says, hey, I found 5 kittens in the bush, or hey, there's a really friendly stray here. But every once in a while, again, you're going to find a surrender. And today's world, it's getting a little more sad. So you'll have Joan, who has had her kitties. As a matter of fact, upstairs we have somebody who had to surrender because they moved out of their apartment, couldn't afford it, and all that good kind of stuff. A bonded pair, mother-daughter, 15 and 17. So, they have all kinds of history, though, and they can kind of tell you a little bit about that. Are they good with cats? Have they been around kids? Have they, what's their temperament and some of those other pieces? If you can get the history, great. It's rare, but try to do whatever you can to do that. So, we got somebody here. All right, so here's going to be my favorite. Behavior over looks. We get a Siamese that comes in here. We get a fluff ball that comes in here. Everybody panics. And sometimes they're not very empathetic to what it is they're doing. You are rescuing at a shelter. You are rescuing at a cat cafe. This is not Target. This is not Walmart. So it's really important that you understand that you need to be looking at what is the right cat for your situation. There are beautiful Siamese long hair that may be in here, but is scared to death, has been through some traumatic situations. I don't know that being in your house with 3 Chihuahuas and 4 kids under the age of 10 is a great idea for that cat. That cat is going to recluse. It's going to go under the bed. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to prejudge anything beforehand. Crypto here is going to be a lot. It's going to take a lot of work, but you might have that same family. You might have those same Chihuahuas. Crypto's going to be able to handle that. We're going to be able to do really well in that scenario. So what happens at our cafe, and then also happens at shelters everywhere, is they'll get calls. Hey, I saw this cat online. I need to hold it. I need to be there, and that's not the way we do things. In our cafe, we insist that you get to meet the cats before you actually adopt them. This is a 15-year commitment on average, is what they say is the average is 15 years for an indoor cat. And so we want to make sure that that match is there. And yes, we need to make sure that we get reimbursed for the time that we have here as fosters families for these cats in order to help pay for their care and adoption process and things. So it's really important. We allow kids in our cafe. If you have kids, you feel as if that they're going to be able to be well behaved. Yes, let them have a vested interest in choosing out which cat it is and make that bond. But please, 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 please find a kitty that you in your heart it matches. You feel as if it matches for your situation right now, based upon kids. Dogs in the home, cats in the home. It is really, really important to be able to look at the behaviors themselves. What I will give a plug for cat cafes across the country, I love the socialization process. So they are here, they're petted on, they're loved on all the time. But again, you can get to know the different personalities. Speaking of which, so Robert, who do we have over there again?
This is Buttons. Yeah, that's you.
So Buttons again. Buttons is someone who likes to go up. Buttons also is very, very affectionate. He gets along with the other kitties, but not necessarily best friends with the other kitties.
And he's older. He's 7.
So Buttons is 7 years old. Got a little bit of a belly on him.
Well, yeah, me too.
But when you come in here, I've seen Buttons many a times over the past 48 hours. He is just nudging on people, loving on people. And again, you make that match, you go with your heart, figure out what's going on. You don't just call up based upon a picture that you see on the internet. So anyway, so that's number 6 is spend your time. When you go to adopt an animal, make sure that you allocate at least an hour for you to be able to do that. We encourage people here to come in about 15 minutes early, especially if you are adopting. Take a look at how the cat does with other people. So it's good to have a third-party perspective when other people are interacting with them. If you're at the shelter, again, make sure, now they're in different situations. Sometimes they have visitation rooms. Sometimes you actually get in the cage with the cats. That sounds weird, but they have little condos now that are much larger and allows you to kind of get a good feel for that. There are some scenarios in that cage. I'm thinking of the one in Kenton County Animal Services in Cincinnati area, where you can sit down in up to like 6 or 7 cages that are there. And there are 2 cats per cage, maybe 3, depending on if they have bonded pairs. And you get to just spend as much time as you want. And they even have little small rooms for you. So it's really important that you set aside time. They'll make the time to be able to do it. Again, you don't want to just go in there and say, oh my gosh, look at that Siamese kitty. We have a Siamese kitty upstairs. And part of the bonded pair, but very, very quiet and kind of reclusive away. So it's important that would be something that you would want within your household. Number 7, personality. Big deal. A month ago, we had an animal, super playful, exciting, lady loved it. And what she found out is that he was very playful, and he was an only cat in the house, and he woke up at about 5 in the morning every time and yelling and screaming and running. And that was too much for her. And she was, I think, a little bit older age, and she couldn't get up and do things, and she was still working. And so it was kind of a big deal. And that is something that you need to make sure that you're looking at. So I kind of created a couple of things to think about. Number 1, lap cat. Do you want a lap? Do you not want a lap? There are a lot of cats that will just be all over you all the time. And you need to make sure that is okay with you. It sounds great when you're doing it for an hour, but you got to make sure that that's something you're prepared for. Number 2 is loud. So loud, meaning they're always yelling, always walking around. I had one lady took the loudest cat in the room, and she worked in telemarketing from home. So, and it worked, but do know that might be something that happens. Play is the next one. If you are going, this is a really easy subject to breach on right now. This is a kitten. You saw a 7-year-old. All right, big difference on how much they play. The 7-year-olds play, But at the end of the day, this guy is going to take your every moment in time, as you can see here with Robert. So climbing up your back. Yes, they're all over you. They'll be playing. We set up all of our podcast equipment. He's throwing his little crinkle ball all around. He's even biting on cords. And so we had to put everything up. But they are a handful. And you need to know that that's kind of what you are preparing for when you go in. And then the last one, but not least, is outgoing versus, maybe more of a shy kitty. And there are plenty of shy kitties that, when somebody walks in, they're going to walk away, and they'll come back out when it's only you. And some people like that. It's a quiet, soft environment. The kitties may come into your lap, but they're just not always out all the time, and that can be a good thing. But a lot of times you may have a cat that you want that when strangers walk in, they're okay. They'll come greet them and they'll come hang out and get in other people's laps. I wanted a needy cat. My last one the one before last that I adopted was just really, really needy. And I loved that, and he still is. So anyway, so choose, number 8 is choose a cat based upon your situation. There's a couple of criteria that I want to tell you about. Number 1, do you travel? If you travel a lot, you need to know that a kitten is probably not the best idea for you. They will tear up the house afterwards. It is a great deal of anxiety when they don't have somebody that can be with them. So please make sure that when you do have a kitten, you have time to spend with them, including the direct 48 hours after that you adopt them as well. This guy's going to need a lot of adjustment to the house. He's going to need a lot of time in order to be able to, build his bond. And I've even read up into some situations, it could take 30 to 60 days before they fully own or feel as if they are at home. So make sure that you know that if you are traveling. Next is kids. We embrace kids. And I love kids to death. It's a big passion of what I have here is being able to share this experience with kids. The reality is, though, depending on what age your kids are, they can be a lot, and they want to treat the cat like a baby doll. And that doesn't always work. Or I guess like an army figure, too. They do that, too.
Actually, we'll let you pull it like that. Most do not, but this one.
So it's really important that you're understanding what age group your children are behaviorally at this particular time, and you adjust for that accordingly. I'm not saying that if you have kids, you shouldn't adopt a quiet cat, but you're going to need to prepare for your kids on what that expectation is, how that's going to work, how it's not going to work. Yes, kittens work great with kids because the kids want to play, the cat wants to play. But you also have to understand that kittens bite. Kittens don't understand when to retract their claws all the time. Although Crypto's pretty good. When you watch him play, he doesn't have the claws out. But when they're at that 2, 3, 4 month old, yeah, it's all claws all the time, ready to play. That's a big part of what your situation is too. Big house. If you have a big house, there's a lot of adjustments that need to be made that way. You are inviting yourself into confusing your cat and perhaps litter problems if you have one litter box up in the 3rd floor and you have 6,000 square feet. It's a big home. If you have a really, really small apartment that you got going on, again, make sure you do your research beforehand on apartments. We've had that happen as well. Somebody calls us up and said, my landlord's changing his mind. I need to bring this cat back. Side note, by the way, huge pet peeve of mine. Take a look at what your landlord's rules are. Many, many of them allow them, but there are some people out there, and I want to encourage, if you are involved with a landlord situation or you own an apartment complex, there are some rules there that say you must declaw in order to bring the cats there. I have no idea why they do that. Declaw as a side effect can cause a lot of spraying and peeing outside of the litter box because it hurts their fingers and it just doesn't feel comfortable. So that's something we want to encourage you to look up first if you are in an apartment versus a large house. So that was it. Number 8 is, of course, your situation. Number 9 is something that we've covered a little bit about the age of the cat. Kitten versus cat. I love these scenarios because these cats are with each other 24/7. I like the socialization. And the reason why that's great is because we introduce them to your home, then they'll be able to adjust. But you need to know that if you go to a shelter, you might see a cat inside of a cage, and that cat's been in there for quite a while. They haven't been able to interact with other animals. They haven't been able to do that. It's an adult cat. So you need to know when you're looking at adult cats, ask on their history, have they been with other cats? Have they been exposed to other dogs, exposed to other kids and that kind of things? And they may not be able to give you the answer, but it's definitely something to do the research on. If you're getting a kitten, there is an advantage, right? So if you have another animal in the house, there's always an adjustment. Sometimes I've heard it taking 24 hours. Sometimes I've heard it 24 days. So kittens, that adjustment can be a lot quicker at times. But let's just say that you have a 17-year-old cat and you say, well, he needs a friend to play with. I'm going to get him Crypto. You know what you'll end up doing? You'll end up getting Crypto a friend. Yeah, because it doesn't always work out that way. So you got to make sure. The other thing that I'm going to encourage you to do, if you're looking at this age right here, which, by the way, I mean, how precious. But if you're looking at this age, you might want to look at getting 2 of them. They're a handful. They constantly want to play. And I can't tell you how many times we have that going on. So Robert's exposing Circe.
A little older. This is Circe.
And how old?
I think she's 2 or 3.
So it's 2 or 3, but again, Circe's been around Crypto, and she kind of understands it. This is a great example here of really wanted to do. This is important. Let's just say that you had a 2-year-old at home. Now you kind of know what's going on. And look, Circe's even reaching out to sniff. And this is, again, part of that socialization. I feel like they're right on the bubble, don't you, Robert?
They're great. I told them exactly what we're trying.
But this is a big...
This is a good example. She came and she stayed in her carrier for the first couple days. She was here, and now it's great.
Elderly dogs might be really good with an adult cat and some of those other pieces. Sometimes people have a dog at home, and then again, another good reason to get a kitten. The kitten just has no fear at this particular times. They haven't been exposed to the threat. As a matter of fact, here at the cafe, shameless plug, we have regulars that come across the windows at all times. And we do encourage that as long as they don't let their dogs leap at the window, but that's how we get socialized. And then, so that's it. So make sure when you're, again, kittens can be great with kids' energies. You got teenagers, adult cats are great as well. But this is why it's so important to come into a room like this. You could find an adult that just will not leave your kids alone. That take advantage of that situation, because that is a great scenario to have, and teaching your kids how to take care of them. And then last but not least, let's talk about support. It is important that you are in a scenario where after you adopt, there is a support mechanism after that. We are so blessed here at this location with a pet helpline. But there are pet helplines that you can go to. There's chat areas that you can ask questions. It's important for here, like we have pet insurance. There's lots of pet insurances that are out there. You need to make sure that if you do the adoption, get the pet insurance immediately. Just Google it, pet insurance. That way that when you get the kitty, the way that they say it is as long as there's no pre-existing conditions. So you can't all of a sudden find out that your kitty has FIV or FIP, and you have all these vet bills, and you call them up and say, I need insurance. Pre-existing, not going to work. But that's a good support mechanism. Finding a helpline, ask the shelter if I have questions. Some of you may need a little bit of questions, a lot if you've never had a cat. So make sure that, you say, can I call you if I have questions about this and about that? That is a really, really important, thing for you to be able to have. Now, the next one is, worst case scenario, but it's not actually the worst case. Second worst case scenario is, what happens if this cat doesn't work? Do they provide a support mechanism following the adoption itself? That is a huge portion of this too, because some of them don't. And if that's what the scenario is, you're kind of stuck with what it is you're doing. You're going to have to call friends. You're going to have to say, can you help me out? In the shelters that we work with, they will take a resurrender. As a matter of fact, they want you to resurrender it. And I think that's the right attitude to take. If you're talking to your shelter and they say, well, I guess if it doesn't work out, we'll do this. You really don't want that. You want them to say, absolutely, you bring it back here, because what we don't want you to do is put it out on the street. What we don't want you to do is put it on Facebook Marketplace and go, somebody's just going to buy it and they're looking for cheap. You really don't want to invest this much and do all this great rescuing for a cat only to go and turn around and put it on Facebook Marketplace for somebody who's looking for something cheap. So that's not at all what it is that you want to do, but those shelters are going to say, yes, I'll take these kitties back, and if in here in this case, in KHS will give you a voucher towards another adoption, and so that's an important piece of it. Right? So rescuing is amazing. And do remember, that's what you are doing. You are not buying. There are not guarantees. You are not going to, of course, control Mother Nature. But you can do it right if you follow those 10 steps, making sure that you look at all those different criteria. Again, take my notes. Look for a reputable shelter. Make sure that they are spayed and neutered. And again, at a reputable shelter, you're going to be able to adopt a cat at a lot less cost and a lot less trouble. And there's a vet that takes a look at them for the spay and neuter. Make sure that you have a strong vet and testing process. You should be able to gain those records when you leave that shelter. Ask for history if you have it, or at least ask for history on what they've done in order to help out the kitty. Behavior over looks. That's number 5, making sure that you are looking for a cat that's going to fit your situation. 6 is spend time. 7 is looking for a personality rather than a look. 8 is choosing your kitty based upon your situation. 9 is age. And of course, 10 is support. So we really appreciate everything that you're doing. If you found this video of value, please subscribe, please like on here. I know that's the narrative of every podcast, but the reality is what we are trying to do as a mission is spread the knowledge, spread what it is that we're doing beyond just the physical presence that we have here in the state of Kentucky, Cincinnati, as well as Louisville. And we're trying to really make an impact beyond just the adoption process. At 8,000 adoptions, we've probably talked to 16,000 people about adopting. We know where the failures take place. We know where the successes. We've gone over a little bit about the success. We're probably going to go over a little bit about the failures, what not to do with adopting. But we really appreciate all the support that you have. Again, please subscribe, share with your friends, use this as a resource, or message us if you have any other suggestions on what we might be able to do to help. So thank you on behalf of my fantastic staff, Robert, and the Purr Play Sip Podcast. Be sure to make it a perfect day. Thank you.